Okay, I want to welcome everybody back again into another great session. Thank you so much for participating in our first virtual boot camp. It has been a great morning already. A lot has been learned and shared. We're in store for some excellent final discussion topics and networking going forward. So I want to introduce Sean Regan, who's a great partner, one of the early founders of SCbio. He's going to moderate this great panel this morning. We've had so many great stories of companies that have pivoted with a partner during this pandemic. Now, the next story of working with a partner actually started more than a couple of years ago. Sean Regan, CEO of Rhythmlink, also, as I said, a SCbio board member, is going to lead this discussion about a novel safety electrode that has the potential to reduce needle sticks with his partners in this. Mark Simler with ZIAN, the renowned Neuro Institute down at MUSC, and Jessica Barley with the Medical University of South Carolina. So Sean, thanks so much for leading this discussion, and please take it away.
Sure, thanks Sam. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a little strange because really don't have any feedback besides a couple of smiling faces at me. And I usually like to pace and walk around a room, and I'm gonna have to be planted on my chair. But thanks in advance, and we look forward to any questions that you have during and after. I think that you'll be able to provide those in the chat. Sam, thanks for the opportunity for us to be here and the nice introduction. And I think really the best place to start is where all of this started. So Jessica, I'll turn it over to you. And if you could give us a little bit of background as far as who you are and what you do, and then really most importantly, where the idea came from, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So I'm Jessica Barley. I am a neurophysiologist at the Medical University of South Carolina. Been there for 11 years. And I run the intraoperative monitoring program there. And for those of you that don't know what intraoperative monitoring, or IOM, is, it's a way to preserve neurologic function in real time. And so it monitors a vast array of neural systems and helps map out neural functioning in real time, so surgeons can make optimal surgical maneuvers that allow the patient to wake up neurologically preserved versus devastated. So the inspiration for the idea was born from the recurring unwanted feeling I kept experiencing when I would arrive in the operating room to take care of a patient. So it's no secret for those of us that work in the operating room that it's a hostile and unwelcoming environment for a variety of reasons because of the high stress and stakes of what's occurring there. But I always assumed that the members of the team would welcome me and the service that I was there to provide for the patient and the whole team, but I realized they didn't only welcome it, but they were afraid of it. And it was because the equipment that I was using in abundance, which is about 45 needles per case per patient, actually introduced a way of them getting harmed while they were doing their jobs. And so I witnessed several care team members, from surgeons to residents, anesthesiologists, nurses, my team, myself, get stuck with dirty needles. And so I assumed that somebody was working on a solution to solve this problem. And when I realized that no one was really out there trailblazing this, I thought maybe I should give it a try. So that's how it came.
Thank you, Jessica. So to give you a little bit of background, because this ties in nicely to what Jessica just told us about myself and what Rhythmlink does. Like Jessica, I used to do intraoperative monitoring in the operating room. So I've used these needles. I've been stuck by these needles. I know exactly what she's talking about. I went from working in the operating room, to make a long story short, to eventually starting a company that makes these subdermal needle electrodes, in addition to a whole bunch of other medical devices. But one of the primary products that we make are these 40 or 45 subdermal needle electrodes that Jessica referenced. So I'm, in a sense, part of the problem because we haven't yet come up with a quick, easy, effective way of reducing needle sticks. So Jessica's inspiration has been felt by everybody in the intraoperative monitoring space. It's actually a project that Rhythmlink has looked at a couple different times in a couple different ways and didn't really make sense for it to happen. But we did get approached by MUSC and by ZIAN, and this is where I'll turn it over to Mark, Mark, you can tell us a little bit about ZIAN and what it does and how it interfaces with MUSC, and then eventually how ZIAN and MUSC approached Rhythmlink, and we can go down the path of actually connecting and collaborating, which took some time. It was definitely, as Jessica knows, it's not short. It takes a lot of time to do all these different steps. So Mark, let's hear a little bit about you.
Yeah, as I look at the virtual screen, I'm positioned exactly between you two, which is the actual role that I'm supposed to play. So you have a clinician or someone who's trying to do healthcare and Jess is amazing at it, as you probably were too, Sean. I haven't seen you in action, but I've seen Jess in action, and she's unbelievable. Can hardly see her hands moving as she's trying to save OR time. But yeah, pain point. That's exactly what we're there for. Pain points that the clinicians have that involve technology. So this is the new technology, and we are there with the experts that are needed around the technology to then take her idea and then move it across to where someone like you and your company can take it, from there and take it to manufacturing and go through FDA approval like you successfully did this spring.
So where does ZIAN fit inside of MUSC? Is it inside of MUSC? Is it part of it? How does that work?
Yeah, it works as a part of it because we are a standalone nonprofit, but we are only exist to serve the research of MUSC. So we're started as a subset of the Tech Transfer Office. So the Tech Transfer Office holds all of the intellectual property for MUSC. And then we work on a subset of it, namely medical devices. And we gather the resources needed to move those from the idea stage over to a stage where a company would want to acquire the technology, and then they would commercialize it, or we would create a startup company in some cases to commercialize the technology, get it out there in the marketplace, where then Jess now would have it in her hands and not get in this case, not get stabbed with a needle anymore, because she has that available in the marketplace for her to purchase and use in the OR.
Gotcha. And can you talk a little bit about the IP generation and that process and what has happened internally at MUSC with Jessica, with the inventors, and then how it moved from MUSC to ZIAN, and eventually how the idea gets percolated out into potential partners who can commercialize it?
Yep, try to keep it brief, but that's exactly, like, pretty much in a nutshell, all we do all day long. But certainly the inspire stage is when Jess had the idea, she wrote it down. So that was a disclosure to the university. And so the university gathers all those. And then because it was in the neurosciences space, and that's where we started in the neuroscience space, we reviewed it some years ago. It actually is one of the, I think it's slightly, it was disclosed slightly before I even got there, just a few months before I even got there. So it did spend some time kind of going through the same process we did. We had some growing pains. We, trying to figure out how many projects we could do per year. But this one was, a compelling technology, definitely a need. And you have Jess, who is, not having it. She is not going to get stuck again. And she's going to make sure that, ZIAN puts his resources to making sure that that doesn't happen. So she was a very great inventive partner in this, helped drive it forward. Jonathan Edwards, who's also the chair of neurology now, was a co-inventor. But we take it in and we did a patent searching on it, found that it was pretty wide open space, especially the design that they come up with. And then we filed for a patent. So that has been in progress for a number of years, and we're getting close to where it will be issued, I believe, this year as a full patent. And then the patent is one thing that describes it and it helps protect it. But we have engineers on staff that need to reduce the idea, like what Jess was thinking, to an actual device. So we can do in-house prototyping, design, and make actual parts and get feedback from Jess, which is great because she's one to give good feedback. So the original design was a little bulky, and like a patient's gonna be laying on this for many hours. That doesn't work. So we worked with iteratively with her closely, quickly. Well, maybe not that quickly, but as fast as we could, to make it really optimized for all the conditions that she could come up with, kind of in the OR. And then we had made, fairly working prototypes that we were able to present to you. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I remember that very well. So as Rhythmlink got involved in the process, and this is something that we've done before as far as, you know, we've created a bunch of IP ourselves, but we've also licensed in some intellectual property. And we've gone down the path of looking at intellectual property from particularly teaching institutions, hospitals, big organizations. And I think there's 2 points here. One is that it's really hard to work with big institutions, especially in the tech transfer piece. It takes a lot of time. Oftentimes the technology is really not developed enough to help the commercializing party get a sense of what it could actually do and look like. Or it's just there's lots of red tape, there's lots of contracts, there's lots of lawyers. It really takes a long time to look at this. And we got approached, we took a look at the patent and the idea, and I remember thinking, this is something that's neat, but I'm not sure if we really need it or want it. And we kept talking, and as time went on, eventually what happened, Mark, you'd mentioned the prototyping piece. And so internally, what ZIAN was able to do is go back and forth with Jess and continue to work on the idea, take some of the feedback from Jess, take some of the feedback from some of your potential commercial partners, and eventually get us another round of prototypes that once we took a look at these prototypes internally at Rhythmlink, I think this was the second or maybe even the third go around, we said, this is it. And I remember looking at it and said, all I had to do was look at it. And I knew that this was something that we wanted to pursue. I tapped Leah Hansen, our VP of sales and marketing, who's also a clinician, and gave it to her without any sort of prelude to what I thought. And she had the same reaction, which I knew she would, which is why we've worked together for 15 years. But it was that prototyping, it was that piece that ZIAN was able to bring, which was a little bit of commercialization, some of the commercialization, some of the prototyping, to really get the product a little bit further along, to allow a commercializing partner to then really understand the idea and the vision behind it and how it could potentially be made and what challenges we might see. And this is, I mean, I used to do what Jess does. So I know what these needle sticks are. We make these needles. So for a commercial partner to have someone else doing some of the prototyping and putting it in front of us was really helpful. And you know, we even shortcutted it because we had that vision. We just needed like one little step to go forward. I think what ZIAN is able to do and what MUSC can leverage is for other commercial partners who don't have as much of that same kind of clinical experience, that ability to prototype and to iterate and to get it out to the commercial world is really, really valuable and a big piece of what ZIAN played in this whole process. I think another piece that ZIAN played that was really important was, I think you're able to shortcut a little bit of the technology, well, actually a lot of the technology transfer that normally would happen with MUSC. But by doing it with ZIAN, it allowed us to move much quicker throughout that whole process. So once Rhythmlink saw the IP and knew that the IP was filed, and that's actually a big piece because we actually don't necessarily want to talk with people unless they've filed a patent or they know that they're not going to file a patent, because we really don't want to commingle any types of ideas where the ownership of the intellectual property becomes disputed. That's terrible. No one wants that. So one of the first things that we ask when people come to Rhythmlink and they ask us, can you make this product or these electrodes or this medical device, we say, probably, let's sign an NDA so that you're protected and we're protected. And then we said, you know, make sure you file a patent, because then there's no dispute as far as who owns what. But Mark, can you talk a little bit about that shortcutting piece that ZIAN is able to do, where you can help get the technology out of MUSC?
So the way that works is that because of how we're set up and with the resources, and once we select a product to move forward like this one, then we have complete autonomy to do kind of whatever we want with it within our mission. Our mission is to be sustainable, so we want to sell the technology and the profits from those technologies sustain our operations. So with that being part of our mission, and then the overall vision of helping patients, if we can sign a contract that can meet those missions, again, sustainability is pretty straightforward. We want to get the technology back if something happens, and we want to sell it for a reasonable market price. And we're willing to wait for the downstream. So we're willing to wait for sales of the product to really start to make money. But with those, we have the freedom to sign any contract we want, really. It really helps with the speed the process, because there's no committee like a normal route might take through a tech transfer office. We can just, we have a small board that has to look at the criteria for the license, and then we can move forward with it. Does that answer? Is that what you're talking about with the speed? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's much quicker, frankly, than would have happened if we would have gone directly through MUSC. So, and
MUSC is great. They've evolved with us, and they're really great now. They move very quickly. There's been some licenses that I've jealously looked at that they've moved before we even get a chance to even look at it. But yeah, for sure, we are all understanding that process can be tedious, and yeah, all of us at MUSC worked hard to make it move faster.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
After that point, and once Rhythmlink said that we were interested, part of what we had to do with ZIAN and MUSC is basically hopefully prove to them that we're a good partner. So we had to go internally and look at this product and start to get a sense of, all right, how long is it going to take to develop? What's the regulatory pathway going to look like? How are we going to design it? What materials are we going to use? How long is all of this going to take? So part of what we did is then put together a project plan of what we thought we could do and where we would take the product. And then effectively, this was part of the negotiating process with ZIAN and MUSC to then say, hey, this is what we think can happen at Rhythmlink. And then we basically iterated that multiple times with ZIAN and with Jess and MUSC to say this is the plan as far as what we know it to be right now. And then essentially we use that to create a series of milestones inside the licensing contract, the licensing agreement, that effectively Rhythmlink has to hold up our end of the bargain as we develop this process, so that you're able to hold our feet to the fire and make sure that we're not dragging and that we're held accountable. And I can say that we worked on a deal that worked well for both parties and for everybody involved, so that every type of licensing deal and commercialization, there's all kinds of little peculiarities that you have to deal with, whether it's when is the product going to be launched, and when are you going to start paying royalties, and when are the volumes really going to take off, and how are the markets going to respond to this. And in medical device, it usually takes a long time for markets to respond to anything. So Rhythmlink looks at these, and we encourage our partners to look at these, as these are usually 3 to 5 year projects until we can really get a lot of good traction. And I think, Jess, do you remember when we started? This was, by the time that this actually got involved with Rhythmlink, this has been about how long?
Well, I can't recall, because I feel like it was 8 years from when I first put in the disclosure, and then was it around 4 or 5 years ago that you all were involved? When did you start? I can't recall, because for me, it's been almost a decade of a journey, but
yeah.
Mark, do you remember how long?
Probably late 2015. The license was signed in 2017.
Okay. So
yeah,
but we started asking or reaching out to Sean and his company, around 16, 15 or
probably
something?
Yeah, it would have been 16. So
Okay.
Even though this is now the Rhythmlink piece and the ZIAN piece is 4 years in, and for Jess, it's almost a decade. And one of the things that we're saying is this has moved really quickly in the world of medical device, and it has, but obviously it does take a lot of time. And one of the reasons why it takes time is that once you then sign the license agreement, then you can start working on the commercialization piece. And essentially what there's a couple of things that have happened there, and it's really been, I think, a wonderful collaboration and partnership. So what we've done is we've set up at least quarterly meetings where all the parties get involved. Generally at Rhythmlink, we have one of our project managers, one of our senior engineers who is working on this. Her name is Dr. Sabrina Hasty, and she's really been wonderful as far as managing the project. She'll get everybody together. We'll do a quarterly review. We'll find out where all of the intellectual property is. We'll find out where we are in the regulatory pathway, on the commercialization pathway. We have built a variety of different prototypes along the process and sent them out for everybody to take a look at. And we've continued to iterate throughout the process. We had to get 510K approval. We're basically at the point now where we can talk about this, and we've only really been at that point for a couple of months now. So the timing for all of this is good. But we've been in stealth mode for a while, essentially because we don't want to let other companies know, even though this is protected by intellectual property, we don't want to let other companies know kind of what we're doing, so that they have that much longer to catch up to us if they do end up wanting to come out with a product that reduces needle sticks. So what I really wanted to do next is talk a little bit about just that process and what your team has been able to do with the prototypes that Rhythmlink builds, and how your team has been able to take them, give us feedback so that we can continue to iterate and change, and partnering with you on that clinical piece has really been valuable for Rhythmlink.
Yeah, so that's one of the most exciting things is I would hear from Mark and he would say, we just got a box of prototypes in, and probably less than 5 minutes I would be in Mark's office snagging the boxes and letting him know I would be back in touch with my feedback, which is usually was a 24-hour turnaround time because I was so excited. It's like Christmas morning every time. And we would take them, my team and I would take them into our office, and we have mannequins. I would take them to our simulation lab, which is outstanding. And they have an OR room, and I would break them and snap them and think of all the ways that it potentially wouldn't work or a way that it could work better. And I would bring the dismantled pieces of the prototypes back on Mark's office and plump them down and say, we need this, 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 and this. And eventually, I think, Sean, it was you were like, okay, we could tweak this forever, but let's just get it out there. Which, was so true. And obviously I would have never known when it was time to stop tinkering, but it was so fun to get that from your company and see it in your box, and then take it and then work with the engineers and then hear what you all felt about our feedback. So.
And I think Aaron just put up a picture of the actual electrode itself. So Jess, why don't you, while it's up there on the screen, why don't you try to explain a little bit about what people are looking at?
Okay, so what we are looking at is, so this top white part is the adhesive. And so if you see that little tail in the corner right there, you would take that off like a Band-Aid adhesive. So what we've been doing currently, what everyone has been doing, is that there is a needle, as you can see in the center of it, that's just straight and uncapped. And there's a little tiny rubber cap around it when they come in the box, but you pull those off and you insert them into various places in the human body, from the top of the scalp all the way to the feet. And you use tape. So you tear off 1 million pieces of tape and you try to tape it in as securely as possible. So that obviously takes time, is very cumbersome. So what we did is we put the adhesive over it with a nice soft cushion so the patient could be on it. And if you take the adhesive part off like the Band-Aid, then when you kind of press down in the center, and that needle, you can't really tell, but this kind of outer area that bulges up is a casing. It's a casing where the needle can't stick you. And so you deploy it after you take the adhesive off, you insert it in the patient, and then it's stuck and it's secure. And when you pull it out, it automatically retracts back into the sheath. So you don't have an opportunity to get stuck by it. Did that do it justice, or would anyone else?
It does, as far as you trying to explain a 2D picture. I think there's if you want, if you go to the Rhythmlink website, which is www.rhythmlink.com, and search for different pictures there, or just Google needle electrodes and look at images, and you can see them. These are small 13 millimeter, very sharp stainless steel needles. They're not syringes, they're not hollow. So all they do is slide just underneath the skin, and then they record nerve activity. Almost everyone knows what an EKG is when you're recording heart activity. These needle electrodes are made specifically to record information from the nervous system. So they have to be a little bit different than EKG electrodes, those big sticky pads that everyone's probably either seen or had on them at some point. And so those needles, they're very small, they're very sharp. And if you're reaching your hands underneath the patient drape to remove or check on electrodes, then if that needle has come loose, you're just basically sticking your fingers in a needle beehive and you can get stuck. So the ability for this little hinge inside of that needle to, once you bend up the hinge, stick the needle in, put the adhesive on, so when the needle comes out, the hinge comes back down, covers the needle so that you can't get stuck anymore. And that should reduce needle sticks in the operating room. And that's the whole idea. So that whole idea, actually there's a law out there that says that if you're able to do this, reduce or eliminate needle sticks, then hospitals are supposed to pay for it no matter what the cost. Now that's not going to happen, but there are reasons why they obviously want to be able to avoid those accidental needle sticks. They can be emotionally devastating when it happens to you, and it's happened to me. Jess, I know it's happened to you. You have to go through a series of protocols at the hospital where essentially I remember having to go to the operating room or the emergency room, getting my tetanus shots, getting tested for all kinds of things. It's not pleasant. So if we're able to do this and successfully reduce needle sticks, then this is really an interesting product that we're going to be able to help the clinical folks. So these are needles that are helping the patients, but we're going to be able to protect the clinical people who are using it. Jess, I know from Rhythmlink's point of view, one of the things that was really great is the ability to use your lab, can you tell us a little bit about the lab and the different things that we can do there? Because being able to send engineers and clinicians from Rhythmlink down to MUSC. So Rhythmlink is based in Columbia, South Carolina. We're very lucky that we're so close to MUSC. We can go down there. We can get hosted by Jess, and she allowed us to come in and collaborate. Can you tell us about your mad scientist lab down there?
Sure, of course. So whenever there is a need or we need to test things, even as we're working on the next iterations of the design, we just call them up and say, we would like this for however much time we need. And we book that. And obviously I take the OR suite because that's where we are. And I take as many mannequins as they will allow me to use, and they prep them for me. And we have the entire body to work on and see and situate equipment as if it were there in real time. I mean, it's an invaluable teaching, learning, and experimenting tool that we have at our fingertips. And so that's been just exquisite to use, whether it's for, testing or for photographs or for whatever the need is. And it's constantly available. There's never any issue getting in or getting time there. And they're incredibly helpful, resourceful, and friendly. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's a wonderful resource. And for Rhythmlink, we don't always get a chance to go and clinically see what's going on. So a lot of our products are used in the operating room. It used to be, years ago, it used to be a lot easier to bring people into the operating room. Now you basically can't. And pre-COVID and especially now after COVID, a lot of our products are also used in ICUs and emergency rooms. Same type of thing. It's hard to be able to get in there to show our engineers, our design engineers, our manufacturing engineers, even our clinical folks, it's really hard to have that kind of ability to try something out in a clinical setting on a mannequin. We do a lot of stuff at Rhythmlink internally. So there are people who will volunteer their scalp and their skin to get stuck by needles, myself included, although it's been a while that anyone is stuck with a needle, which has been nice. But the ability to use this that MUSC has, it's really been fantastic. And I think that this is one of the points that we wanted to make, is that right here in South Carolina, this was really an amazing opportunity for a variety of reasons. Basically, Rhythmlink being in South Carolina and being an intraoperative monitoring device maker, and Jess being the inventor also here in South Carolina is really pretty coincidental. But boy, did we really take advantage of the ability to do this. And one of the ways that we've been able to do this is through SCbio, being able to, over the years, put together all of these different entities, and just knowing as far as what's out there. And that's a big piece of what makes all of this happen, is understanding in South Carolina and in the Southeast and really anywhere in the US or worldwide, but making those connections and putting these people together. So we're excited because this is all South Carolina. And that's really, that just doesn't happen much. But these types of partnerships and the ability of working with different companies, working with different organizations, MUSC and USC and Clemson, there's a lot of that going on here in South Carolina. And oftentimes it's just a matter of getting connected and continuing to explore all of these different connections that are out there. I think we're at the point in the process where the product is now, it's being built, it's cleared regulatory wise, and we're expecting a commercial marketing launch towards the end of the third quarter. It's probably going to be the first couple weeks in the fourth quarter. So we're very close to actually having product on the shelves, sterilized and ready to go for the Rhythmlink team to continue to market and push and hopefully start selling a whole bunch of these. And it's kind of where we are as far as the project goes. It'll take time for us to get the word out, for clinical folks to try this, for hospitals to try it. It'll definitely, it'll take time. It'll be another couple of years before we start to see any type of, most likely really significant volume. But the only way to get there is obviously to start somewhere. So next couple of weeks or so, we'll be launching the product, and we're really excited about it. So I know I've talked a lot. Mark or Jess, are there any pieces that you want to bring up or talk about that we haven't already covered?
I want to say that part of what working with you, of course, has been awesome, and for a reason. One of the certainly because it was in South Carolina, so to having this be like a state, a huge state win where we have all the players were in here, but certainly we would have gone outside of South Carolina to find Rhythmlink. And of course, Rhythmlink would have been the best licensing partner for this, because I don't know if everybody knows this, but just because of Sean's specialized space, but they are the market leader in this space. So, we couldn't ask for a better partner to have, the biggest player in this space. And all the other folks that we talked to, knew it. And they said, well, we wouldn't be able to compete with Rhythmlink on this. We'd be, whatever the story might have been from these other competitors. So just by having this license is, not only high profile because of South Carolina, but high profile because we are working with the market leader. And I want to continue to do that. Jess has other ideas that we've been working on, because it doesn't stop. Okay, we solved that problem. There's plenty of more problems. And, we just love getting more ideas from her, from the rest of the MUSC team, and continue to do this process. And, working with Rhythmlink in the future would be great too. But other South Carolina companies that we've, kind of joined with to start, it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, second that too, and just say we've been so fortunate because everyone in the team with Rhythmlink, ZIAN, and Jonathan and I, as the inventors, have been engaged. They're clear on their roles, their responsibilities. They're clear and respectful of deadlines, unforeseen temporary setbacks. Like, Sean said, we maintained an open and honest communication and feedback. And then because of that, we developed a mutual trust and respect for everyone's role, and no one was more important or valuable than anyone else. And I mean, Rhythmlink was the #1 choice to start with, but then once we started the collaboration, it became even more obvious that it was just, like a match made in heaven. So it's great.
Good. Well, thank you. That's nice to hear. I'd say one of the things that's really hard from Rhythmlink's point of view, and I know it's hard from other companies' points of view who are trying to develop products and technologies, is just that clinical piece and being able to hear right from clinical people. What are your pain points? What are the needs? What are the things that you really want to solve? Because I feel like at Rhythmlink we can solve those problems, but we need to know what they are, and it's really hard right now for a variety of reasons to get a good collaboration. It's just difficult to be in the operating room and to hear these stories, and it takes time. So those are some of the things that ends up being really valuable to us. And because we have a ton of ideas inside of Rhythmlink, but we only have so much time and people and resources to be able to explore them. So when somebody else has done the heavy lifting and done the thinking and has, to the point where here it is, there's IP that's protected, it's well thought out, can you take it from there? That from us wanting to partner with people, that's beautiful. I mean, that's really helpful for us. I think one of the questions that Aaron put on the chat, and we only have a few more minutes left in the session, but what advice would we have for working with someone like ZIAN or MUSC? And I think that the biggest thing is to contact them, to get to know them. Even if you don't necessarily have any type of project that's out there, it doesn't matter. Make a connection so that they know what your capabilities are and in the space that you're playing in and what you're interested in, so that they can file it away. Because there's all kinds of IP and ideas that in a sense are hidden for a long period of time. This is 8 years that she's been working on it. So it takes a while before that IP even surfaces out to the world, before the commercialization piece gets going. So, my advice would be get started early and make contacts with all these different organizations in the state, so that they know who you are and what you're doing, what you're looking for. Because they'll keep you in mind, because there's lots of ideas, and Mark's job is to find companies to take these things and go to the next step. And one of his options is to start a startup themselves. And I think it depends on how big of a market is and what the opportunity is, but they're looking for partners actively.
If you have a need of an R&D pipeline in the medical device space, we've done this where companies approach us and say, well, we need something on this particular product spot. Then we gather a team, just like if we did this in reverse, if Rhythmlink came to us and said, hey, we need something in the needle space, I would go get Jonathan, get Jess, put them together and say, okay, this is what Rhythmlink needs. And then they start inventing it because they experience the same pain point and they're in the OR and they would just generate it. We've done that with companies where they ask us for a particular thing. Nothing has existed, no IP existed. But as a result of that product, something was invented, IP existed, and you get to pre-negotiate the license. So there's, because nothing exists, it's like what could exist and what would that be worth? And if we make that thing that needs to be of that value, then everybody wins. But if we don't achieve it, then there's the risk is much lower.
Yep,
certainly do that.
So I think unless there's any other questions or chats, probably, unless Jess or Mark, there's anything else to add, then Aaron, otherwise,
yeah,
we'll wrap it up.
Well, this has been a wonderful discussion. And of course, we are so happy that this is all happening with you all as partners here in South Carolina. So thank you for sharing your story today. It's always great to hear it. And also I've learned that having patience is key. So Jessica, it's a long time. So I think it was maybe it was Martine Laverge who talked about patience, persistence in Pinot Grigio or Pinot Noir, you know? So anyways, again, thank you all. We're so thankful that you're able to share the story.